When it comes to the Zelda series, there's a huge variety of games spread across numerous generations of consoles, each with its own unique experience. Whether it be Ocarina of Time, which continues to hold the title of best rated game of all time, or the most recent Breath of the Wild, a Zelda game that strayed away from the formulaic design choices with its open world and freedom. These games tend to be the most discussed among groups as they have a huge following, whether it's about theories, memorable moments, or how they stand out from the rest. Unfortunately, this means that there are many titles within the series that go unnoticed, as the more popular ones sort of overshadow them. And in my opinion, some of the most unappreciated games of the Zelda series come from, ironically, Nintendo's most successful game console, the Nintendo DS. More specifically, the games Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. And while the former is among the top 6-ish in regards to sales, considering the DS family has sold 155 million units, it's not as impressive as it sounds. Around 3% of console owners have a copy of Phantom Hourglass, while 25% of Nintendo Switch users play Breath of the Wild. The DS line of Zelda games may not be as flashy or packed with content as others, but there's a lot to appreciate. The fact that Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks are so closely connected to Wind Waker's story is honestly a breath of fresh air. Timeline theories are fun and all, but sometimes it feels like that's all people worry about. I did make a Phantom Hourglass theory all about Bellum well over a year ago, with future plans to cover Spirit Tracks. And considering my previous video was on that game's antagonist, what better topic to discuss than Malladus? Described as a powerful demon, Malladus is this game's true main antagonist. Early on, it's revealed that Chancellor Cole, a demon in disguise, plans to free Malladus from his prison by undoing the seal of the Spirit Tracks. Roll credits. To do so, he acquires Zelda's body to use as a vessel for the Demon King, though once that plan fails, Malladus fuses with Chancellor Cole in an attempt to destroy the world in the little time he has, only to be defeated by the hero and princess. But the question I want to answer today is a simple one. Is Malladus related to Demise's curse? It's a question that many have asked, and the responses vary between people. In this video, I'll be elaborating on why I believe that not only are these two connected, but how it ties into other villains of the series. Before we can make any sort of comparison, it's important to understand what Demise's curse actually is. The way it's phrased in the localization suggests that this curse originates from the hatred of Demise. However, this is expanded upon in the direct translations of the Japanese version, being labeled as the Demon Tribe's curse. While it may seem like a minor change in the context of the story, this one small detail will prove to be helpful in our analysis. Demise goes on to state how this curse draws an endless cycle of death and rebirth till the end of time, forever. A curse that can never be broken because of its cyclical nature. In this way, the Zelda series is closely tied to the beliefs of Buddhism, one of the largest religions in the world. Zelda is a franchise often taking inspiration from real-world places and cultures, with one of the earliest examples being an item from the first game. The Book of Magic had a cross on its cover, a symbol often associated with Christianity, and in the Japanese version, this item was named the Bible. But it's no exaggeration to say that, when it comes to talk of real-world inspiration in the series, the religion most often discussed is Buddhism. Games such as Skyward Sword are heavily influenced by this religion, the best example being the ancient Cistern. I won't bother going into detail regarding all of the connections this temple has to Buddhism, however there will be a link to one of my videos below if it's a topic you're interested in hearing more about. Now, the reason this is relevant to understanding the Demon Tribe's curse is because of a concept called samsara, a cycle of repeated birth, mundane existence, and dying again. In Buddhism, the goal is to break this cycle of death and rebirth by attaining nirvana, or blowing out of desire. Demise described the Demon Tribe's curse as an endless cycle of death and rebirth, making it very similar to the Buddhists' belief of samsara. In the past, I have talked a bit about the Demon Tribe, and while that will be a big focus of this video, I highly recommend checking out one posted by QuestWithAaron a few months ago since it does a full dive into the Japanese translations, and is one of the reasons why I'm finally making this video. Many believe that Demise's curse was also responsible for the creation of Malice, a purplish-red substance that plays a huge role in the story of Breath of the Wild, where it's used by Calamity Ganon to corrupt the Sheikah technology, bringing the Kingdom of Hyrule to its ruin. And while this is the most prominent case of Malice in the series, other Zelda titles have substances that are likely related to Malice, including the already mentioned ancient Cistern. The underside of the dungeon has pools of a poisonous substance, and one of the items in the game, the Evil Crystal, uses the same color scheme, described as pure crystallized monster Malice. On the other end of the spectrum are gratitude crystals, said to form when one has overwhelming feelings of gratitude. Knowing this, it's likely that Malice existed prior to Demise's appearance. But all that means is that the Demon Tribe's curse didn't create the substance. To say that Ganondorf's surplus of power isn't because of this curse wouldn't be accurate. It's more so that Malice is an inevitable byproduct of the curse since it's formed by one's hatred. In fact, prior to the battle with the hero, Demise describes his own hatred as an eternal grudge. And since this hatred never perishes, it can only grow, explaining why Ganondorf's corpse is overflowing with malice in Breath of the Wild 2's trailer. Now that we've established what Demise, or to be more specific, the Demon Tribe's curse is, we can move on to the next part of the equation, that being Force. You know how Game Theory just can't stop talking about FNAF? Well, that's sort of the same thing with me and any discussion surrounding Force. But that's mainly because it's such a big topic of the Zelda series, especially when we're on the topic of Malladus. In the series, there exists numerous kinds of Force. You have the Light Force, a sacred power given to the people by the Minish, now passed down the princess's bloodline. Life Force, said to exist in all living things, which Bellum goes after in Phantom Hourglass. And Force Gems, which Angine states are created from the energy of happiness and gratitude. We could even go as far as to suggest that, since the last one is formed by overwhelming feelings of emotion, the gratitude crystals from Skyward Sword are also a form of Force, a sacred power existing within everyone. Things get interesting once you realize that, while these three have different names in the localization, the Japanese version of the game refers to all three, the Life Force, Force Gems, and Light Force, as Force. Something that I'm sure you already know if you've been watching my channel for a while. And then, of course, there's the Triforce, one of the most iconic items in the series. The question now is, with all the connections the Light Force, Life Force, Force Gems, and Gratitude Crystals have to each other, how does this relate to the Triforce? One may assume that the Tri in Triforce was included because there are three parts making up the relic, and given the previous connections, it would make sense. It's three pieces of Force. However, in the first game of the series, The Legend of Zelda, there were only two pieces to the Triforce. The Triforce of Power, which is stolen by Ganon prior to the game's events, and the Triforce of Wisdom, which was split up into 8 shards and hidden within the game's dungeons, later collected by the hero. So it's possible that the Tri in the name comes from the shape of the pieces. But if the Zelda team released the first game already knowing that they would add a third piece in future titles, it may still be the former. Either way, I do believe that the Triforce is similar in nature, meant to represent a more concentrated form of Force compared to the Force Gems or Gratitude Crystals, especially since Gratitude Crystals are a direct contrast to Malice, one forming from strong feelings of gratitude and happiness described as a sacred power, the other being a physical byproduct of one's hatred, and the main source of Ganondorf's power. But what about the Light Force of Minish Cap? If there are connections between the Triforce and a Light Force, is the Light Force supposed to be a piece of the Triforce? While imagery of the relic exists in-game, it doesn't appear to have any relevance to the story. It's made clear time and time again that the sacred power Vaati seeks out is of the Light Force. Later, it's revealed that this power resides within the bloodline of the royal family, a power that Vaati tries to extract from the princess before being defeated. And the Light Force is represented by a single triangle, so could the Light Force simply be the Triforce of Wisdom? Well, another detail worth noting is how the origins of the Light Force differs from the Triforce. It was gifted to the people by the Minish, along with the Picori Blade. Meanwhile, the Triforce was a relic created by the Golden Goddesses during the creation of the world itself. The most likely answer to this question is that, while the Light Force and Triforce are entirely different objects, they are made up of the exact same energy. Remember what Oshus says in Phantom Hourglass. Every creature in this world possesses a sacred power. This power is called Life Force. It's the reason why anyone is capable of forming gratitude or evil crystals. They just aren't nearly as potent as something like the Triforce. In fact, knowing this, is it possible that the Triforce is actually the life force of the three Golden Goddesses? Deities that, given their status, would without a doubt hold the most life force out of any living being? It's certainly possible, and would also explain why sacred power is passed down the bloodline of the royal family. Skyward Sword Zelda was Hylia reincarnated in the body of a mortal, so it's not hard to believe that her soul held sacred power, just not to the extent of the Triforce. But how does this relate to Malladus himself? Remember that the Japanese version of Skyward Sword mentions a demon tribe, and that they are the ones responsible for this curse. It's not just Demise, but an entire race of demons that invades Hyrule. And while there exists friendly ones such as Batro, most that share this title act as antagonists for the series. Malladus is yet another being with the title of Demon King. So is Ganondorf once he transforms into the Dark Beast Ganon. We know that Ganondorf himself is part of the Demon Tribe's curse, as he was the reason Skyward Sword gave us an origin story of sorts with the conflict between Demise and Hylia. When Demise first appeared through the fissure, he and his horde of demons fought in a bloody battle against Hylia in an attempt to claim the Triforce for their own. When freed from his seal, the Demon King states that the world would forever be ruled by the Demon Tribe. Ganondorf's goals are very similar in nature to Demise, as most games in the series are about him trying to get his hands on the Triforce for the sake of world domination. On rare occasions, Ganon is successful in claiming this relic, such as A Link to the Past, where he transforms the Sacred Realm into the Dark World and launches an attack on Hyrule. The second detail worth noting is what's said by Demise when he talks of the Demon Tribe's curse. Those like you who carry the blood of the goddess and the soul of the hero, shall forever be unable to escape from this curse. This lines up with what we see in the games. While Ganondorf continues to break from his seal and pursue the Triforce, he's defeated time and time again by the hero and princess. When we look at other villains from the series and their motivations, Vati, Bellum, and yes, Malladus, each one is after a specific sort of power. Bellum's insatiable hunger for life force led him to targeting Tetra, who according to Oshus, had a bold, vibrant soul. Vati desired power and traveled to Hyrule to hunt down the Light Force, later realizing that it resided within the bloodline of the princess. And in Spirit Tracks, Anjean states that the plan to resurrect Malladus requires Zelda's body, as it would be the only vessel suitable for him. All because sacred power flows through her veins. Assuming that the Triforce is a much more concentrated form of life force, the motivations of these villains aren't so different from Ganondorf or even Demise. And all three games of the series, Phantom Hourglass, Minish Cap, and Spirit Tracks, have a warrior with the soul of a hero and princess with the blood of the goddess. Not to mention that both Bellum and Vati, similar to Malladus, are considered demons. The latter inheriting this title once he transforms with the power of the Light Force. So we have antagonists that either are or become demons who seek out sacred power only to be defeated by the hero and princess of that era. And on top of that, there are times where the Triforce takes on a much more vague name. A Link to the Past uses the term Golden Power, and while it's obviously referring to the Triforce, it's a name that may be more true to what the Triforce actually is. And even now, I feel like I've only scratched the surface when it comes to the topic of what Life Force is and how it affects the series. There are certain ideas presented here that I wish to further investigate, such as the possibility of the Triforce being the literal life force of the gods. And that's why my next big project on the channel will likely be a whole documentary on this topic, kind of like what I did with my Zonai series. So think of this video as an introduction of sorts. I'll do some digging in my own time, and if there's enough content for a full-length film, then I guess I'll see you then. Because, you know, at this point I feel like I talk about Life Force in every other video, so perhaps it's better if I make one big documentary on it as opposed to multiple smaller videos. As always, I thank you for watching this video, and links to Twitter and Discord will be down below. I've been NintendoBlackCrisis, and I'll see you all in the next video.